Matt.
What's up?
We are here to discuss the pretty big Ubuntu Unity Gnome news.
Yeah, that was some interesting news to catch at 12 o'clock at night for me. So, what's your take, Rob?
Well, before I jump into it, Matt, I wanted to personally apologize to you and tell you thanks in person. So recently I hit 5,000 subscribers and I did a video just, thanking everyone. And I did two takes. So in the first take, I was, of course, thanking you and Rocco for being part of the channel. And, you had reached out when I first started Linux Quest, you'd reached out early on and we've done several blogs together and things like that. So, had you included, and I had to do a take two because I was going through the list of people to thank and all that good stuff, and I completely left you out. So I just wanted to personally thank you for helping me out on Linux Quest with all the vlogs and everything, and so I apologize I left you out, man.
No worries. I appreciate you always having me on. You know that. So.
All right, so you asked me, what are my thoughts? Well, first of all, as you know, of course, I'm not a big Unity fan, so it's not like, I know. So it's not like I'm going to miss anything there. The part, I guess, that kind of hit me more so than the change from Unity to GNOME is the whole conversion thing. So, that was kind of something I've always looked forward to from whichever Linux developer. And then, you've been using Unity for some time because you've got a particular system. Actually, when I first saw it, I thought about you and that one strange, odd device that you have where Unity happened to work just fine on it. Yes. That slab.
For those that are wondering that have not actually seen this slab of an Ultrabook before, it is a 21:9 aspect ratio laptop. Just let that sink in for a minute. Yeah, the convergence thing has always interested me. Mostly, that was kind of why I was hoping something would succeed to kind of go there. Even if it was Windows Phone with its Continuum, or Canonical with convergence, or whatever. The idea of potentially being able to essentially throw my phone in a wireless dock, so that essentially you hook up a Bluetooth keyboard and you wide-eye display, and you have a full working desktop. What is there not to like immensely about that?
Well, that's exactly right. What is not to like about that? And so, with them dropping the phone, of course, that removes the big part of the convergence. I mean, without the phone, you don't have the convergence. And, my hope was, whoever it was on the Linux side, my hope was whoever it was beat Microsoft to the punch as far as really getting it right, because Microsoft's been working on it and it's not been a success for them. You expect to see Apple doing something along those lines. But it would just have been awesome. And, it's not to say that the KDE team couldn't do it, but at any rate, now let me back up a minute. So are you going to miss Unity, Matt?
I'm going to miss some of the ideas that in its current implementation are very poorly implemented. I think if some of the ideas were redone, that there could have been a really good desktop UI, really unique desktop UI within there. Unfortunately, the way it's implemented as of this moment with 1604, at least anyway, I hate projects dying, but if this is better for Canonical financially in the long run, I can't really blame them for working elsewhere. So, that means going back to the good old days of being GNOME based. So
yeah, well, I posted a video as soon as I saw the news, as quickly as I could. I posted a video talking about it because this is something that will be discussed for some time to come. Unity is not going away today or tomorrow or next week. It's going to be around for a while, and it'll be around in the long-term support releases for a while. However, now that it's like the news is broke and everyone's going to be discussing it and everything, you wonder what kind of efforts will be put behind Unity moving forward. I would guess none. And then, you've already got a community edition of Ubuntu Gnome. So some of the questions I've seen in the video are, number one, how would that all work? Would it just roll over, would the resources from Canonical then roll over into the community edition? Or would the Canonical team start from scratch? Those are some of the questions that I'm seeing. Then I'm also seeing people say, forget GTK3 and just move over to Qt. Qt's the future.
In Canonical's defense, they had talked about moving Unity over to Qt. So,
okay.
But I don't know how this will affect certain projects like the Ubuntu Gnome project and stuff. I don't know. I almost think Canonical would probably do what they were doing prior, Ubuntu 10.04, which was they would take bits and pieces and revamp them and reutilize them to, like the I know some people hate them, or the Notify OSD stuff that was originally, I think it was Project Ayatana, if I remember correctly.
Oh, I don't recall.
Well, this is going back to like 10.04 or 9.04. This is like many years ago. They took and made the notification, like the notification system in 10.04, different than the one that Gnome was using. So are they going to go back to customizing, kind of like what Linux Mint originally started out when they made Cinnamon do it, or when they, something like that? I don't know. I hope this puts more development into Gnome, which is always great. I don't really know what's going to happen to a lot of the community editions, but I hope this at least kind of gives distros a chance to standardize it, even if it's around personally a desktop that I don't like. I'm all for having more desktops. So, as my prior point, I'm kind of sad to see a project like Unity die after all the time and money and stuff that's been put into it. And let's be honest, some of these guys, some of the people at Canonical are probably going to lose their job. I mean, once you start refocusing your company, if you don't need UI designers, why are you going to keep them?
Well, that's a great point. And just kind of reading through some of the comments and posts and everything on the news video, it looks like there are more people who are happy to see it go than there are people sad to see it go. And that's just, that's not an official poll or anything. That's just quickly glancing through the remarks and things like that. The remarks stem from good riddance to why didn't they switch to KDE? Those kinds of things. But overwhelmingly, people, I think, are happy to see Unity go away. I'm like you. I don't like to see things like that in projects, especially projects on that scale and that magnitude end. And you think about Unity 8 around the corner and the efforts, and like you said, people could lose their jobs. I mean, the ramifications of a project like that ending are typically not positive, unless it's just something that was causing tremendous issue in the Linux universe, which Unity certainly was not. So,
well, for some, it depends who you ask in the Linux universe. I get the no, hey, goodbye mentality. I understand people that don't like it. I understand that why, the whole not invented here mentality and people not liking certain things kind of closed down over the past like 6 years or whatever since Unity came out. I get all of it. These are people potentially losing their jobs. The project has officially been axed. And I'm kind of used to Canonical doing that. They're like Google in that regard.
Yeah.
But I think there are some good ideas that also died with the project, which is too bad.
So what are some examples of that? Because you used Unity much more than I ever did.
Now, I might catch flack for this, but these are just certain ideas that I could see that if they were implemented differently. If you take as an example, the way the Deepin desktop handles organization of apps within that way. Yes, I know that's kind of the GNOME way of doing things, but Deepin has it a little more different with the categories and that stuff. The way you do it, the way to categorize stuff in Unity is like 6 clicks in order to actually do it. If it's just done by default, like the scopes idea down at the bottom. If your application is defaultly opened up to like that categorized view, like that, as soon as you hit the dash, like applications, that's your default view. You can have the universal search, even though half the time it doesn't work in Unity. Or if you decide you only need files, why not incorporate, essentially make the file scope Nautilus? So as soon as you dig into the scope for files and you're looking at your files, that is the file manager. You don't have a separate app. So basically, you're combining stuff to make it easier to use. Unfortunately, the way it is implemented is not, because all your files, you click on the files, then you have to expand it in order to actually find everything. And if you don't know the name of the, it's just this giant kludge of crap to use. So personally, for me, I think if they had implemented like a file manager within the dash, that would have been a huge change on how to start thinking about it. The HUD, I think, was a great idea. Never fully realized. You know, there. I'm not saying there aren't issues with it. People that want to know, go back. I have a video from like 11.10 or 11.04 where they first introduced Unity. I give a whole rundown of what I don't like about Unity at that point. But there are certain ideas that I think are well implemented in there if they were rethought and revamped. So personally, I hope someone actually decides to say, hey, screw it, I'm going to take up the Unity 7 code and run it, personally. I would love to see that. I'm all about desktop UI.
That's a good point, Matt. I think that you'll see someone pick that up and continue with it and possibly make those changes you were talking about. And you brought up something that made me think about the common, I guess, aspect of both GNOME 3 and Unity, in that they have both been whipping boards, if you will. You know, when Unity first came out, I mean, it was a whipping board for everyone to jump in and talk about all of the areas where Unity had made mistakes and where they didn't like the UI. And the same with GNOME 3. You know, for a long time, GNOME 3 was a whipping board, if you will, because of the drastic changes that took place. One of the things, Matt, that I've been thinking about ever since I read the news, and I've been using GNOME 3 off and on, GNOME, take your pick. I've been using that for some time. I ran it straight for over a month and, you know, been setting up all the extensions and everything. And that led me to think, okay, if Canonical comes in, once the process starts to happen and, you know, the first release with the GNOME desktop, you've already got a lot of legwork in place with certain extensions. And so if you could put some money and talent in behind some of those extensions and incorporate those into the Ubuntu release in the right way, this could be a home run for them in a lot of ways, because the extensions, without those, GNOME 3 wouldn't be something that I would even consider running. So what are your thoughts there about Canonical kind of taking that ball, picking it up? There's, well, lots of balls there as far as the extensions are concerned.
If Canonical, the problem with Canonical right now is they have to worry about legacy, because they have OEMs who currently ship Ubuntu with Unity. And the only way I see them getting around that is, with them going the GNOME route, is by using extensions and trying to make the transition from Unity to GNOME as simple as possible. Unfortunately, they don't have exactly the best track record for doing stuff that's common sense. Because any of us in tech that deal with anybody, what is the one thing users hate? Change.
Change. Yeah. No, that's a true statement. This is right now. This is early on. We got a ways to go before we would see 18.0. You can look at the release cycle and go back and track it, and then you kind of know time-wise what we're talking about here. So a lot of this right now could totally change. We could see a blog post in a month. Nope, sorry. We decided that wasn't a good idea. We had user feedback, overwhelming user feedback that tell us they love Unity. We could be talking about that in a month.
We could.
But
yeah.
But go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, one of the other good ideas, I didn't actually touch on this. They were talking, Unity is designed around that whole, not just convergence and all that jazz. The way it's designed is to get everything out of your way to focus on one task. Like the design paradigm is that. That's why everything's pushed to the left and global menus and all that crap. About 90% of the things everybody doesn't like. The idea and the concept for that is actually sound, because we are no longer in a 5.4 or a 4.3 world. We are in a 16.9, 21.9 in certain aspect ratio cases, where vertical space is very precious.
Right.
So I understand where they're coming from with that, but I'm just glad to see Canonical not die on their sword for this, because
right.
If they kept pouring money into this and Mirror and Unity 8, because they only talked about Unity 8. We don't actually know what's going on with Unity 7 in this current iteration. They just said They just said they're going back to Gnome and getting rid of Unity. Well, what about all this legacy stuff you got going on?
True. No, that's very true. That's an excellent point. And here's the other thing I thought about too, Matt, is this is certainly a newsmaker for Canonical, right? So people are going to be discussing this. There's going to be podcasts and everything. There'll be other articles. There'll be lots of commentary. And so that's going to keep Canonical and Ubuntu in the spotlight for some time with these changes. And, in the tech world in general, the news cycle's very short. You'll see this huge news and everyone talks about it for 24 hours. And then a week later, it's like, what? It's like but I think for some time, especially in the Linux universe, this will be something that will be a topic, and in some cases, probably a heated topic. If Canonical does this right, though, I think this is a golden opportunity for them to take what I think is a good desktop with the proper extensions and really turn it into something that is pretty awesome.
I agree. For those, before anyone flames me about saying I'm a Canonical hater or fanboy, do realize my main desktop, this machine that we're currently doing this conversation from, is running a Arch-based KDE distro.
There you go. Now I have one more question for you, Matt, and we've kind of got to wrap things up here. So, one of the, I'm going to say, key distros of 2016 and into 2017, in my opinion, is Ubuntu Mate. In fact, I've called it the gold standard because it covers so many bases.
Mm-hmm.
So, I started thinking about Ubuntu Mate. Yeah, it's its own deal. But they've done such good work with the Mate desktop. So I thought a little bit about, well, why not change things up there and maybe look at Mate, but then that pulls away from Ubuntu Mate. So what does that do to Ubuntu Mate?
The way I will look at this is, if you are a current Ubuntu Unity user and a /lover, God bless you, more power to you. If you are looking for that Unity experience, there's this great way that Mate works called Mutiny. Use it.
No, that's a great point. You're right. With the ability to quickly switch the overall layout, and Mutiny would handle that for you for the most part.
It would. I mean, there's going to be different. There's no dash and all. Whatever. But if you're used to that layout, it actually works really well.
Yeah. Well, Matt, my guess is we'll hear more news on this. We'll be able to follow up with more discussion as things become clear over the weeks and months. And if anything, it'll be exciting to see kind of what the end result is.
Yeah, very much so.
I appreciate it, Matt.
Appreciate it as always, Rob.
All right. Catch you later.